Hello there, Primary 6 and 7. So hopefully you've watched the first part of the lesson today, where we spoke about a skier, looked at a skiing picture painting. For this one, you're going to need a ruler and a pencil. I've got two here, you won't need two, you just need one. And we're going to be really thinking about drawing the body again today, so kind of continuing on from what we were working on last week. And we're going to be thinking about perspective when we're drawing. Okay, so when we've looked at perspective before, we've probably done this in class, if we've got two things and one of them is further away and one of them is closer, I hope you can see that okay on the video. The thing that is closest to us, this one, looks bigger, looks larger, and the thing that is further away should look smaller, although they're actually the same size. So we're going to be thinking a bit about that today, and linking it back to our learning from last time about drawing the human body. So if you've still got your sketches, you don't have to have them, but if you've still got your sketches from last time, do you remember we made these little booklets with different sketches, our timed sketches? If you've got those, brilliant. You might want them just as a bit of reference. If not, then it's okay. If you're wanting to have a bit of practice of drawing and you want to go back over this, then you might want to watch the previous video. And if you missed the previous video, you might want to go back and do that instead of this lesson, but it's up to you. So what I'm going to do is draw a couple of lines with my ruler, and this is what we're going to use them for. So we're going to be drawing the body starting quite large and then kind of smaller. So we're going to be thinking about all those proportions that we used, excuse me, the proportions that we used 2 weeks ago, and try and work that so that we can scale it up or scale it down. So make it large and small and think about perspective. So the first thing we're going to do is to draw some lines. I'm going to start probably, just make a little spot in the corner. Don't have your line going straight across your top line, so do have it down at an angle. So, and you're just going to do these sort of really light ghost lines. So I've got one there, and then one sort of coming down here. So just some nice kind of light lines. So that's the first thing that you need to do. So you might want to pause the video while you've got that part done. Okay, so you should have your lines drawn like this, and then basically what we're going to do now is we're going to start off with our first, I've just drawn them standing just to make it a bit easier. We will go on to develop the poses a bit, but I think for this it'd be easier just to do more like a standing pose. So so last time we thought about them in this sort of skating position. This time let's just do them in a standing position as a kind of warm-up, really. So remembering back that the head was always a bit smaller than we thought it was going to be. The body was about the same length as our legs. Our hands were coming down beyond this sort of waist area. Okay, so I'm going to sketch out some of these just really roughly. I'm not looking for really detailed drawings or anything. And so we're thinking about, first of all, how big the head would be there. And you can always do this a couple of times. If it doesn't quite work out for you the first time, that's okay. So I'm going to stop talking when I do it, just so I can concentrate. So once I've drawn the first one, I'm going to move up a bit, and this one's going to be a bit smaller. This one's going to be a bit smaller, and keep going until you are, right up to here, and you've got this really tiny figure. Okay. So you can either watch me do it, or you can go for it yourself and get yourself started. Go move along a bit now, and I'm thinking when I'm drawing the next one, head's going to be a bit smaller, not too much smaller, but just a bit smaller. I didn't do much of a neck on that one, so let's get a bit more neck space on here. I'm just sketching out at the moment, not worrying too much about any details. You add a bit more of a shoulder, a bit more of something in there just before my shoulder. It's a bit wide actually, but never mind. So it's not just the head that's getting smaller. Every time you do it, the width of your shoulder should be getting a bit narrower. The waist should be getting a little bit narrower. The legs are getting a bit shorter. The arms are getting a bit shorter. Always remember, keep these, when we draw in class, quite often the thing that people do is they have the arm come down and it stops above the waist, and if you know your arms go way down below your waist, so it's just something to look out for if you're when you're doing your drawings. So getting a bit smaller again. Probably get less detail in as well as you get onto these really small figures. That's fine, because you think about something far away, you can't see it in as much detail. So, with this thick, this pencil's a bit thick, so it's quite hard to do these really small ones. But just even sketching them in. Ooh, I think I've gone too big on the head there. Let's see. So I think I can't really go as small as that one. But you get the general idea. Have a look at your work. You might want to repeat that exercise and try it again if you found it really challenging. But how did you get on? You should almost be able to draw a line, another line along the shoulders. They should all be about the same height. So once you're finished, if you want to, you could have a go drawing a line. They should all kind of match up. Where the waists are, should, if I start, make sure I start at my dot and go to the end person, and you can just have a check and see how did you get on. It will help you just have a look at your proportions. So the waist hopefully should somewhere a bit longer, somewhere a bit shorter, so I could maybe work on that next time. I didn't really put knees and things in, but if you had a bent knee or anything, you could have put that in there. So it just gives you a little idea about perspective and working on your figures and making them getting bigger, smaller, just so that you can really show perspective in your drawing. So we're going to continue to work on drawing, and on this piece of paper here, what I'm going to get you to work on next is we're going to work, I've just done a really rough one here and I'll do one bit more detail in a moment. We're going to work on a figure. Now you could either do, you could do skating if you wanted to. I've done skiing, you could do snowboarding. It's really up to you. You could do a walker if you don't want to do winter sports. Someone could just be out for a walk. But what we're going to try and do is draw the same figure and imagine that we've got like a time-lapse photography. So we've say every minute, or it depends what they're doing, but every so often we take another photograph and then they're all kind of superimposed. So it's almost like this is the same person, just kind of coming down the hill. Okay, or coming closer to us if they're skating or walking and they're not on a hill. I've added in some action lines, just like we saw in some of the artwork at the start, so you can do that. I've kept these quite rough, but you could start, once you've done your rough drawing, you can start to add in a bit more detail into them as well. So what I'm really looking for here is that sense of perspective. It's the same person. they might be in different poses. So the person at the top might be just in a kind of standing pose, just ready. They might be in snowplow as they're coming down. You could think about how you're going to get them to turn if they're changing direction. So this one is facing this direction, this figure is facing this direction. Perhaps you'll finish with in the same position as this, just a standing position. My one isn't, but that might be quite interesting to do. Now I've done 4. You could do more than that if you wanted to, okay? But I think 4 would probably be quite a good number. And what I would say is then going back into it and adding in a bit more detail into your figures. Okay, so they're not just these rough sketches. You can use the sketch then to start to add in kind of bits of sort of detail in their snow boots and things like that. Okay, so to start with, I was just thinking about a sort of horizon kind of line. So you maybe just want to do maybe just some sort of one line just to give it a bit of a setting. And I suppose thinking about where your figure is going to end up, where they're going to start, you maybe want to just have a wee think about that. And you might want to do like a sort of line that they could sort of trace down almost. So perhaps they're coming down this hill and this is going to be their sort of ski track as they come down. Okay, so you can do yours in a different way if you want to. Absolutely make it your own. And then from there, what you're going to do, excuse me, is you're going to start on you can start on the largest if you want. But I'm going to start on the smallest figure just up here. Okay, so it'd be good to go back to your reference drawing here and use that to help you think about the size that you need to do. So I'm going to do one probably about this size. I think this is a wee bit awkward for me to draw here, so I'm going to do it as best I can just at this angle. I'm going to do this one just as a kind of standing position. Just get started, and maybe, I don't know, that's a bit long. Thinking about there holding these ski poles at the top. And I can have my skis on there as well, so you can have your kind of first figure sort of starting at the top, and then you're going to think next about moving them down the hill a bit, so making them get a bit closer towards the viewer, so that when you do your next one they've moved a bit closer towards you, and we can then start to draw them in and make them a bit larger. So I might need to start slightly higher up from that line. And this time, really thinking about the pose. So actually I might angle that body a bit more this way. So think about your pose. And start this one again just here. A bit of a bend in the knee there. You're probably all maybe much better skiers than I am, so you have a good idea about how you would be holding your body a lot more than I do. So do kind of show that. So that one's gone a bit rough. I think I would probably want to redo that one again. The skis are not quite. So the problem I had there was I kind of changed the body positioning as I was drawing it. So it's probably a good idea as you're doing it to think before you draw it, which way is the body going to be facing. I'm going to do one a bit larger here, and then I'll probably try and fit one in here once they've turned. Okay, so this time I'm going to think a bit more about that. I'm going to think about that kind of line almost like through the body that they're kind of leaning into. So just start with that sketched line. You notice that they're getting bigger as they come down. And I'm going to have a bit of a bend in the knees as well here. And there's arms, having them round. This one is coming out to the front, getting those poles in. I know you don't always use poles, but I suppose if you're sort of beginners and things, you would always maybe use poles, or not, depending on how you're doing it. I think the angle of those skis is not quite right, so I need to change that a little bit. Sometimes just looking back at it, so go quite lightly with your lines, and then thinking about your person turning. I'm not going to be able to fit it in here without drawing over the top, so I could think that they've moved down and round and onto here. So we're seeing them from the other side now, so they've moved round. And then thinking about which way these skis are doing. That's quite important, actually. Think about your skis here, because if they're kind of facing the wrong way, it makes the skier look quite awkward. And you can see they're sort of starting to get bigger. I think this one here is just a bit too big. I might redo this figure. And then this one here would be the largest one that we're going to do. So move them up move this person up a little bit. And you could have, it's up to you how you want to have them. You could have them just as a sort of finishing off position at the end, or they could still be kind of skiing on down. So the poles just end. So it's all quite rough drawing, but it's just really working on your sketching skills and your drawing skills. So they're kind of moving around. This one I don't like at all, so I'd probably want to rub that one out and redo it. Just think that it's a bit too big and the angle's not quite right. But that's the good thing about looking at your drawing and going, oh, is there anything that I need to change? So having a look back to this one, I think worked a bit better in terms of the perspective. So that's your challenge today. If you want a much milder challenge, I suppose you could just perhaps do two figures and make sure one's higher up on the hill, one's lower. But keep referring back to your drawing that you did to start with, okay? And see how you get on. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to you sharing some of these and looking forward to seeing some of these. When you do finish, meant to add this, you might want to, if you remember back to the Keith Haring picture that showed you right at the end of the first part of the lesson, there was some kind of action, you know, these kind of movement lines, the ones you can add in. Shouldn't have put any on there because they're not actually moving. But even in here, we could have that kind of almost like trying to suggest they've just turned a little bit. And this person here, you know, just a few of those lines on if you want to. I also did the tracks of the skis on this one, so you might want to kind of add them in a little bit. And as that gets towards you, that those parallel lines should get a bit wider, so they should start to come wider as they come down the hill, and it should be narrower up here. They're the same distance, but because these ones are further away and these ones are closer, these ones will appear to be bigger. Okay. If you wanted to, if you're thinking back to the kind of artwork we looked at the start of the lesson, you might want to add in some other skiers further away in the distance as well. So you could add in a few more things going on here. You could also, just to make it a bit more interesting, you could maybe add in just some trees as well. So you could maybe do some, should have done this maybe a bit smaller, but you could add in some trees just to really get the sense of the perspective in your piece of work today. Okay. If you want to go over it, maybe get a nice sort of black pen or something and start adding in a bit of detail into these. If you're, you know, more detail into the skis, into the boots. If you want to develop your drawing on a little bit, then you can do that. So good luck, and look forward to seeing you share some of your work on Teams.